Jungkook's POV. Watching her trying to get away from me hurt me in a way I can't describe in words, but at the same time, it sparked a fire in me. I grabbed her wrist to stop her and pulled her towards me. She looked at me with her eyes wide open and placed her soft hands on my chest, most likely to push me away. If I can have her besides me without forcing her, then let it be. You are doing wrong, once again. Disappointed too. Replied to an in mind. I'm only doing this to protect her from mistake. I snapped out of my thoughts when I felt her trying to push me away. I shifted closer to her and put my one arm on her left side to cage her in my embrace. She spoke in a panicked tone after observing my movement. Can't you just keep your hands to yourself? Still struggling in his embrace. Instead of responding, I stared at her face, studying her tempting features one by one. She bit her bottom lip out of nervousness, but I made her release her lower lip by gently pulling it out with my thumb. She got frustrated by my actions and said, "Why are you doing this? I already rejected you, John." Furious. I didn't reject you. You did. Believe it or not, but you are still right, and you can't change this fact. Moved back just enough to let her breathe properly. I'll never be yours, stubbornly stated, taking her hands off his chest, held her hand and placed it on his heart again. I'll make you mine, mark my words. Smiles with glistening eyes while holding an intense eye contact with her. Jerks his hand away and pulls her hand back. By doing this, you will not only wreck my life but yours too, bitterly said. Jackie chuckled as if he finds this amusing, while Wine gave him a tap on the You know who's my biggest enemy? Me. I've always been self-destructive my whole life, dear. I would love to have a little inconvenience like you in my life. Softly patting her hand. Jungkook stood up from his place and began walking towards the door, leaving Wine in her thoughts. But the chain of her thoughts broke when he looked over his shoulder and spoke. Tomorrow, be ready. Saying this, he exited the room before Wine could comprehend his words and ask him what he meant. Vine rolled her eyes, being fed up by his strange behavior, and lay down to rest, only to jolt up again due to pain in her shoulder. I really want to escape to the forest, away from everyone, and start a new life. If things keep going like this, that day is not too far away, scoffed and spoke in an irritated tone. Whole day passed like this. Vine's fever went down, but she did not fully recover. Next day at 6 a.m., Vine's POV. I took a shower as Sabrina only told me she is going to change the dressing of my wound. I came out in a bathrobe and sat on the bed to wait for Ondi. She entered the room wearing a long gown, so I couldn't help but ask her, "Are you going somewhere?" "Yes, and you are too." Spoke while avoiding eye contact with her and pulled her robe down a little to start treating her wound. "I'm not going anywhere," frowns while looking at Sabrina. "Everyone is going by and it's a big event for the pack," trying to convince her. "Is he going to be there too?" Raised an eyebrow. "Who?" Confused. Annoyingly sighs and rolls her eyes. "The one who thinks he's above everyone. You are the great Elsa," spoke in a bitter sarcastic tone. But she held her back her laughter as Vine glared at her. "Yes, he's going to be here as well." "Then I'm definitely not going," shook her head. "For me, please," stared at Sabrina for a few minutes before speaking. "What's this function is about?" Getting suspicious. "For celebrating our pack's success and power." Scoffs. "Show off. Must be that Jungkook's idea." Made disgusted face. Sabrina looked at Vine with an empathetic gaze and tried to change the topic. "Maids, bring the dress in." Maids entered the room holding a black gown. But it was not just an ordinary black gown. It looked like a wedding gown, but a spooky one as it was totally black. Yet it looked so elegant and hauntingly beautiful. Am I a bride? Chuckled slightly, looking at heavy dress. Oh, haha, awkwardly laughed. Why do you think so? You are wearing this elegant gown, and I am wearing this wedding one. Points towards her dress and gave Sabrina a look. Because you are new to the family. This function is also for your welcome as well. Grabs Wine's shoulder and took the dress in her other hand while pushing Wine to the dressing. Wine changed the dress and Sabrina got her ready. Wow. Looks in the mirror, feeling stunned by her own beauty. Smiles. You are beautiful, standing behind Wine. Yet my fate is not. Tears welled up in her eyes and she averted her gaze from the mirror. Wine stood up and put on her black high heels. Sabrina led Wine out and they left for the venue. We walked into the venue, but Sabrina only grabbed my wrist and took me to the opposite side of the hall. We entered a changing room and I asked her, perplexed, "Is there something wrong with my dress?" Looks down at her dress to see if everything is okay. No, one thing is missing. She clipped a black bridal veil to my hair while I stared at her, baffled, trying to figure out what was going on. Don't you think this will look over on me? Noticed Sabrina's expression and frowned. This will make you look like what you are, my bride. I flinched a little due to the sudden interruption and immediately whirled around to face him. Smirks and comes forward to stand close to mine and extended his hand out. May I? Glared at him and shook her head without uttering any word. JK poked his inner cheek, being impatient and said, I tried to be polite, but I think you like it rough. He grabbed her wrist again and dragged her along with him. Before exiting the room, Ryan turned her face to look at Sabrina, shocked by what she did. Sabrina, on the other hand, was just crying in response to her. Now Ryan got the idea what was going to happen with her. This venue and wedding hall. As he continued to drag her down the aisle, Ryan tried to fight him off one last time. Everyone was looking at them, but no one was interrupting. JK was just dragging her forward with him without paying any attention to her struggles, and Ryan felt as if it was the end of the world, and now there is no escape. He whispered in a quiet voice as she gazed at Jungkook's silent profile with agony in her eyes. "But why are you doing this with me?" Let out her defeated breath. They were already on the stage. Jungkook faced her and immediately grasped her waist, pulling her close to his chest as if she would vanish at any moment. I'm doing this for you, Jungkook. For a moment, his expressions went soft after looking at Van's miserable face, but he again covered his expression with the hands. JK turned his face to face the priest and spoke slowly. What are you waiting for? Asked the priest. The priest began the vows right away. Wine and William were staring deeply in his eyes with tears in his eyes, only from time to time. Please, sobbed slightly. Don't do this to me. Tears went down her cheeks from time. Don't do this to me. glanced down and cried while hiding her face in his chest, as he didn't want it others to see her tears. Jungkook frowned as he felt like his world was collapsing because of his eyes. While looking at her, he thought he had planned that he was satisfied until he saw him being a vision personally. His breath shortened and his smile was painfully and helplessly glanced at his friend as one was standing and giving reassuring expression giving friend to carry. Priest asked for their consent and Jungkook miles of love, but she didn't get it. Priest asked for why the prayer was I guess you don't love me. One snapped her head up and gazed at him with horrified expression on her face. Priest asked for something. Why didn't he get his work good? Close your eyes and your tears he just nothing but One breath became heavy and she desperately tried to get away from him, but his hold on her was too strong. Please, Jeon, have some dignity. She stopped crying as he got more frustrated. Leave me, Jeon, he yelled loudly as he tried to push him away by himself. Jungkook was mentally preparing himself as well. He was just standing still, holding her finger in his embrace, not ready to go. He closed his eyes for a moment and took a deep breath to calm himself, and he hung down. He jerked her body a little to make her stop struggling and pulled her so closely that not even air could pass. One knew what he was going to do, so she just shook her head helplessly, but he grabbed her neck off her neck and pressed his lips. Examining his palm down, he slightly bit, causing her to clasp his shirt tightly in her face and close her eyes while biting her lips, hardly to withstand. He mouthed her and couldn't help but slightly pet the spot. Both of their eyeballs flickered golden, indicating that they had become He eventually let go of her waist and she collapsed on her knees, sitting lifelessly on it, one covering the place of her mark with her hand. He was not crying, instead just staring to the front with blank eyes, but Jungkook heard something and looked around confused. He heard painful sobs and finally realized to whom he belonged. priest was about to ask Wang to marry him, but Jungkook just told him not to do so. He wanted her to marry him and she wanted to. Their marriage was complete without her marrying him, but their bond was not, which is why Wang couldn't